Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Christian Renteria. It has been, technically, but it is here, at least on the podcast, the end of spooky season. So you know what that means. That's right. It is time for a rundown of the horror and horror-adjacent movies I've seen this year. It's the horror rundown. I've done this the last few years now, I believe, and I always have fun with it. I do. So I want to keep doing it. So 2023, even 2022, horror movies are pretty good. Some even say that it was kind of a return to form, especially for theater horror movies. And this year, it didn't start off too great. You know, it was a very hard start at the beginning of the year for the most part. And they kind of, you know, it took a turn a little bit near the end, which was great. But before we get to this year, let's give you a reminder of what the big horror movies were last year and how this year stacks up to them. Now, of course, these are, the majority of these movies really were theater releases. And most of them we've talked about, and a great majority of these we talked about on the podcast last year. So we got Megan, Knock at the Cabin, Cocaine Bear, The Pope's Exorcist, Insidious, The Red Door, The Blackening, Haunted Mansion, Scream 6, I forgot Roman numerals for a second, Evil Dead Rise, Talk to Me, The Nun 2, Saw X, No One Will Save You, which came out on Hulu, The Exorcist Believer, Five Nights at Freddy's, Thanksgiving, and my personal favorite of last year, When Evil Lurks. So that was last year. Pretty good year, right? Decent year for the most part. And again, this year's movies were, in my opinion, again, a slow start. It was a rough outing a lot of time, but it did progress, like I mentioned at the beginning, stronger as the year went on. And those are just the ones that I've seen. Now, I do feel like this year, with horror movies, I kind of fell behind a little bit, especially on the newer ones. So there were some big ones that I had not watched yet. And I will watch these before the end of the year. So there's a good chance you will hear me talk about or even mention these movies in passing for the end of the year list. So Exuma, which was, I think, one of the 4 movies that came out. I saw the TV Glow, just never got a chance to watch it. I know it's on streaming. I just have not had a chance to watch it. Out of Darkness, which was kind of one of the limited release movies that looked pretty good. Arcadian, which was the Nick Cage movie. Sting, Oddity, and Terrifier 3. I have yet to see any of the Terrifier movies. I know the sickos truly love them. I know Terrifier was a massive success, and there is no doubting that the Terrifier crew did a tremendous job with those movies. So congratulations to them. But I just haven't seen any of them. I will get around to it. That will probably be my homework. That will probably be my homework for next spooky season. In addition to those movies, I want to point out these movies that came out because I don't have too much to say about them. I will talk a little bit about them, but I won't really get into them as much as the movies that I will talk about. And I don't want to call these honorable mentions because it is a spooky season episode. So I'll call this the cutting room floor, if you will. Although cutting room floor usually in the business means something else, but here on the podcast it will mean what I want it to mean because it's my podcast. So here's the short list, honorable mention, cutting room floor, whichever title best fits for you guys. So I have Night Swim. Didn't really care for that movie when it came out. I talked about that. ISS, Imaginary, also did not care about. Blumhouse had a very, very rough year this year. Tarot, which I did not care about. Under Paris, which was the shark movie on Netflix. Lisa Frankenstein, I wanted to like it more than I did. I did end up enjoying it. I just wanted to like it more than I wanted to, or than I did in the end. The Exorcism, which was Russell Crowe's other exorcism horror movie that he started last year with The Pope's Exorcist. The Watchers, I think that was a one that kind of, there's a certain twist in that movie that I felt if they played more into before they got into it, I think would have made the ending a little better, maybe, or it would have made everything that happened after the reveal a little bit more cohesive. In a Violent Nature, which I know is very divisive, and it still will be, and I believe it will continue to be, even when the sequel that was just announced this year as well. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, kind of a, I don't want to say downgrade, because that's downgrade makes it seem like it's worse than I thought it was, but it was fine. It just wasn't continuing the fun that I had with Afterlife. Beetlejuice, which I know a lot of people loved. I know a lot of people didn't but I know everyone seemed to be back on the Beetlejuice train. Not me. Sorry. I that's another one that I was really hoping for. Like, I wasn't looking that forward to it, but I was like hoping that when I actually saw it, I'd be like, you know what? I had a lot more fun than I thought I would. I sadly did not. Azrael, which is Samara Weaving. We talked a little bit about that on the podcast as well. That was really fun if you want to watch that on Shudder. Immaculate, one of two movies that came out around the same time about a American woman who goes to Europe and deals with demonic presence. Let's put it that way. I ended up liking the other one a hell of a lot more. We'll get to that one in a minute. Trap. There's another one very divisive. You're either in on it, you either enjoyed it, or you think this is the worst movie of the year. I fall somewhere in the middle. So that's just me. Afraid. Again, another Blumhouse movie. Just did not work whatsoever. The Strangers Chapter 1. Did not like this movie. The teaser came out recently for part 2, for chapter 2. And it was supposed to come out at some point this year, and they haven't announced it yet. These movies are done. All 3 chapters that they did are done. It's a new trilogy. They finished these because they filmed them back to back to back. I don't know what's taking them so long to release the next one. I mean, I think it would have been perfect to release it in October at some point, or maybe even, early November. But I don't know when they're going to release these movies. If the plan was to release 2 chapters this year and then the final chapter early next year, but they haven't even announced a release date. I don't know when they're thinking about putting it out there, but the teaser for chapter 2, and I mentioned this on the Twitter page, if that was what they were teasing and what they wanted the overall feeling to be at the beginning, if chapter 2 was technically chapter 1, I would have been totally on board. I have lost any sort of enthusiasm I had for this potential new trilogy with the release of chapter 1, but maybe that's just me. Who knows? Hellboy, The Crooked Man. I saw it. Not great. not very great at all. The Crooked Man design just was not great. Salem's Lot, the new Salem's Lot on Max. Pretty decent. It's a pretty decent movie. I had not seen any of the original Salem Lot movies. That's obviously mainly on me. But this one was okay. There was a pretty cool sequence near the end, but it's fine. Strange Darling. I put this one here because as much as I did like it, I know not a lot of people have seen it. Regardless of that, I think there was just, I don't know. It is one of my favorite movies, and I think I just need to watch it again. But I put it on here, and I was struggling to put it on here or put it on the actual list. But I just wanted to put it on here because I don't know kind of at the end of the day where it will fall. I know it's probably going to be like an honorable mention at the end of the year. Definitely going to be that. Maybe even a surprise of the year. But I put it here because I want to watch it again so I can get a fuller grasp of it. I've only watched it once, and I did really like it the first time. This is one of those movies where I just didn't know where to put it. And I even made another little list here. And I was going to put it there too. And I just forgot. But it is very much an undetermined movie. I'll put it that way. So I'll put it there. It's very good. It's also one of those movies where you always hear this phrase, the less you know, the better. This is one of those movies where the less you know, the better. Blink Twice is another one. I like it more than I did as well. I did like what we got. Zoe Kravitz, very good behind the camera. Cast was great. Just, I wanted to like it a little bit more than I ended up liking it. Cuckoo is another one. Really great. Dan Stevens, Hunter Schafer. My first exposure to Hunter Schafer. I hadn't seen her in anything, and this is the first time I've seen her in something, and she was fantastic. Dan Stevens having a hell of a year. This is the year of Dan Stevens, and we'll talk a little bit more about Dan Stevens later as well. Maxine, the end of Ty West's ex Pearl and now Maxine trilogy. It's fine. It's not great. It's probably, I don't know. Maybe this is also another one I had to watch again to kind of maybe see what's going on, but I'll put it there for right now. Speak No Evil. This is a movie that everyone was like, oh my God, the trailer again. And then it's finally out and they're like, oh, this is actually pretty good. Because it is. It is a very good movie. It is very different from the original movie. The ending is completely different. But it makes sense why they would change the ending and what the ending is overall, why they did that. It makes sense. Smile 2. This is another one I was really kind of wondering where I would put it. And I ended up putting it here mainly because I felt like there were certain things where it plays it up. It does the right thing to do for a sequel. It ups every stake. It ups the ante on everything that that the first movie did. But at the end of the day, there were certain little things where you kind of just sit back and think about it. You're like, why did that happen? Or why, where was the switch? Why did it happen this way instead of happening the other way? But it's still a good movie. I'm not going to, denounce it. Naomi Scott gives phenomenal performance. She is very, very good. If, she's had breakout roles before, but if this is the thing that actually breaks her out and gets her more stuff, then fantastic. Great. Couldn't be more happy. Mads. This is I believe French film, if I remember correctly. But it is a horror movie you can watch on Shudder right now. It is or AMC Plus, whichever one you want to, watch it on. But it's a movie shot in one continuous take, which is always good. And I will always give any movie that does that so much credit, because that is such a hard thing to do. And this kind of takes that one continuous take and it gives it the horror twist, obviously, taking place, in one night. This is also, I don't want to say it's like the less you know, the better, but it is kind of a new take on a virus or kind of infection, if you will. Because you think it's one thing, but it doesn't actually become that. It's kind of something else, maybe, sort of. So it leaves you a lot of questions, but not in the way that's like, it's frustrating. A lot of questions, but you don't care because of how progressive the stakes kind of get throughout the movie. So I give the movie credit for that. So those are the, again, kind of the cutting room floor, honorable mentions kind of lists there. The more undetermined movies that I would have put Strange Darlings in here. But the other list that I have is the Undetermined list. Strange Darlings belongs in here. The other big decisive movie, Longlegs. Probably one of the most decisive movies of the year. Longlegs' reputation will most likely at the end of the year, and maybe even next year when we're watching it, or early next year when we see Oz Perkins' other movie coming out, The Monkey, that comes out in January. Longlegs' reputation will be, did this movie live up to the hype, or was it overhyped? What's the reaction to people watching this movie going to be when they remove themselves enough from the hype machine? What will happen on rewatch, kind of thing. The movie itself, the mystery aspect works until it doesn't, until it kind of just explains and lays everything out for you. And even when it does that, it's still pretty great, mainly because of who is telling you that story. Michael Monroe could keep you invested. She, of course, plays the main character. Nicolas Cage's character will definitely make or break the movie for you, maybe, at some points. He does have a very Nicolas Cage scene at a certain point, but then he kind of pulls it all in and kind of gives you what you think you were going to get throughout the whole movie, and kind of what this movie trailers teased you on the kind of performance that you were going to get for him at the end. And he gives a very great performance at the end of the movie, which behind the scenes was his last thing that he shot, which was very interesting. Blair Underwood and Alicia Witt play supporting roles on here, are very good, especially Witt. I think Witt kind of steals the movie from everybody. She's always reliable in everything she does, but I think she kind of steals it away from everybody in this movie. Production design is great. Cinematography is beautiful. There's a great jump scare that I think everyone agrees got them. And Osgood Perkins, like I mentioned, he has another movie coming out in September. He is very much a stylistic director. The question will be if people will be okay with style over substance most of the time. I'm not saying that's what Longlegs is, but I'm going to go out on the limb and say that Longlegs is not my favorite horror movie of the year so far. The next Undetermined movie that I have on here is The Substance. There are things that I very, very much liked about The Substance. Demi Moore, Marco Qualley, they give great performances in it. Overall, the look to the movie is very unique and cool. The score is pretty great too. The themes of the movie are told perfectly. The concept of aging, beauty standards in Hollywood, what price you're willing to pay for that, even kind of substance abuse, really, when you think about it. There's also some tremendous and disgusting body horror in this movie, because make no mistake, this is a body horror movie, and this movie goes to places. And knowing that Moore and Qualley were willing to go there and do that, and the trust they had, and writer-director Caroline Fargeet, I think that's how you pronounce her last name. I apologize if it's not. She did the 2017 movie Revenge. The fact they were willing to trust her with the material and perform this material, that we, the audience, were going to be in good hands. And they all come together very, very good, or they all come together to perform a very, very good movie until a certain part. For me, it's the final act, like the last 5-10 minutes of the movie, where it kind of goes a little bit over the top. Just a little bit, just a tiny, just a smidge. And I was all in the movie. I was all for the movie until that final bit. And I understand why they did it. I especially hearing some post-analysis of the movie from, other podcasters and, interviews and stuff like that. But, it still kind of got to me a little bit. So if you're willing to go along for the ride, you have to be willing to go along for the ride for this movie. I think you will be in good hands. If this movie is satire to a very big extent, especially when that it's very much satire, I think you will enjoy the substance for what it is. If anything, enjoy it for Demi Moore and Margot Qualley's performance in this movie, because they are very, very good. And I don't know, but that said, I don't know if I would actually fully recommend the substance. But I don't know. I mean, I just there's a lot I like about the movie. It sets a very clear set of rules that the second they tell you the rules, someone's not going to follow them. It's a wild ride. And if you're willing to go along for the ride, the ridiculous, satirical look at probably the all too real Hollywood beauty standards and aging and the body horror of it all, The Substance is going to be that movie. And I don't blame anyone that puts The Substance as their favorite horror movie of the year, or just one of their outright favorite movies of the year, because I think it does deliver on a lot of accounts. Just for me personally, there's a certain point where it's like, that's too far, even for me. So yeah, that's it. So that's the Undetermined. Let us get to the big movies, some of my personal favorites, the highlights, if you will. There's obviously a lot of highlights in these other movies as well, but I didn't know what else to call this. So let's call this part of the podcast. So I'll just call this the Standouts. There you go. I'll do that. Standouts. So the first movie is Late Night with the Devil. I enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed the single location approach of the whole thing. The thing I really liked about this was that it was very much a standout and highlight performance for David Dastmalchian. He leads the movie. He plays a late night host, Jack Delroy, whose show is on the bubble of getting canceled. And at the last desperate move, he decides to bring the quote unquote devil, demon, live on the show. What can go wrong with that, right? So the big thing about the movie at the time was, even though the movie was getting, some pretty good word of mouth from the film festival circuit, right before the movie came out, I think it was the week, maybe even the weekend before, it was revealed that the movie used AI images for probably a combined time of 10 seconds. And they were used kind of as the show cover titles, or when they cut to commercial kind of bit. And then, of course, when they came back. And this is coming off the heels of the strikes in Hollywood. So everyone was very anti-AI at the time, even though the movie had been done already and had already done the film festival circuit. I think this is kind of one of those last minute additions they did for the movie. And a lot of people were upset about this movie, were upset about it, and upset with the movie for doing that, upset with, the team for doing it. And they were even calling for like boycotts for the movie. Some people that I follow on Twitter, that live in the LA area, they were saying, at their screenings that people would boo the cover when they came on, when they were watching, their screenings of the movie. So it was very interesting they took that route. And I think, maybe it was the director, maybe it was even David Dastmalchian himself who came out, and they were kind of not necessarily defending it, but they were saying why they did it in a way. But 10 seconds on screen, yes, it is a bummer. No doubt about it. And obviously the whole fight for AI seems to be kind of going away, because it feels like every week or so we're getting some sort of tidbit that AI is slowly making its way back into the Hollywood industry. What the hell were the strikes for then, if that's going to be the case? But that's a whole other story. But the movie itself, very good. The ending kind of stumbles on itself for me personally. I think I probably would have ended it 5 minutes before. I get why they kept the ending they did and why they went along with the ending they did, but I liked that this kind of became, again, like I mentioned earlier, a showcase for Delsmachian. He's always the supporting role. He's always the character actor. He never really gets to play the lead in this show that he can carry a movie and do it very, very well. This is a slow burn movie, and when it finally lets loose, you can be like, oh, here's our budget. Here's the gnarly looking practical effects that are very reminiscent that you would get like in the 70s and early practical effects movies. You're gonna get a dig into the occult stuff in Secret Hollywood Club based on a real thing, apparently. And this movie just, waits and waits and waits until it finally gets to blow up, and it blows up in the most spectacular way that it possibly can. So that's my opinion on Late Night with the Devil. The next movie we're going to talk about is Infested. I had heard practically nothing about this movie until it came out. And when it did, and I saw it, saw all the kind of, praise the movie was getting, because everyone was like, this is one of the best horror movies of the year. And usually when you kind of hear that, obviously you want to take it as a grain of salt. That said, foreign horror movies usually live up to that, moniker. When Evil Lurks last year, obviously. This movie is a French movie, and Infested kind of lives up to that moniker a little bit. I wouldn't call it the best horror movie of the year, but it is up there. And I definitely would call it the freakiest movie of the year, at least that I have seen. Because the movie is about a group of friends who have to survive in an infestation of a rare spider that has taken over their apartment building in France. And full warning, if you do not like spiders, do not watch this movie. If you even have a small fear of spiders, do not watch this movie. If you have a fear of things jumping on you, not necessarily jump scares, just things kind of like jumping on you, maybe even crawling on you, do not watch this movie. And even if none of that applies to you, if you're one of those people that's like, I'm not afraid of spiders, or I'm not afraid, of things crawling all over me, whatever, this movie will still freak you out, because I know it did for me. And that is enough to highlight and give this movie a spot here. And when it comes to, like, if that doesn't do it for you, the characters probably will. You actually kind of like the characters. A lot of these characters feel very, very real. They have real fights about things. They feel like real friends. They feel like real people up until a certain point. And I think everyone who has seen this movie knows what moment I'm talking about. A character does something kind of near the end where you're like, you didn't need to do that. This is where we get into, this is where these characters felt real, and now it feels like, oh, it's a character in a movie. Okay, I liked Infested. It's probably not a movie that I will watch again anytime soon, and not because it's an extreme downer like When Evil Lurks, because When Evil Lurks is an extreme downer. This one does have rewatchability qualities. I feel like if you put this on with like a group of friends, or even like at a party or something, everyone will get a kick out of it. But I'm mainly not going to watch this because I don't want that feeling of the spiders all over me. So yeah. All right, the next movie we're talking about is Abigail. We talked a little bit about this when I did my monthly roundup when it came out. But the biggest thing, of course, about Abigail was everyone saying why you would give away the vampire twist in the trailers. After watching this movie, and I think I mentioned this when I talked about it earlier as well, I could see where they could have edited around the vampire twist, but that didn't take away from my enjoyment of the movie, of its entirety. The single location, the small, great cast of characters led by Melissa Barrera. Of course, this is kind of her first post-Scream performance. Dan Stevens, like I mentioned, having a hell of a year. Catherine Newton, always reliable, of course, coming off Lisa Frankenstein this year as well. And Kevin Durant, character actor, we would see him, at that point anyway, later in the year under a mocap suit for Kingdom of Planet of the Apes. And a creepy little scary girl played perfectly by Alicia Weir. And then, of course, you have the snappy dialogue and the bombastic ending, final act that, of course, Radio Silence is known for, of course, with the Scream movies, and, of course, Ready or Not, which is getting a sequel, which was announced earlier this year as well. Did everything work? No, but I had a hell of a lot of fun watching this movie. It is a movie that I am definitely going to watch again, probably before the end of the year. maybe even sometime next year. I do want to watch this movie again. I think it's a lot of fun. It's everything you can want from a genre movie. It's everything you can want from like a comedic, dark horror movie as well. I trust Radio Silence with everything they do and with everything they're going to do afterwards. I like Abigail. I'm not an Abigail, I will defend Abigail, but I'm also not going to be like, if you don't like Abigail, that's fine. Whatever. And if you only dislike it because they gave away the twist in the trailers, then, all right, did you watch the movie? Did you watch the whole thing? That's all I will ask you. Moving on. The First Omen. I will be honest. I did not expect anything from The First Omen. The trailer really worked. I really liked the trailers. They were creepy, but I still had my doubts. Then I watched the movie, and all that flew out the window like a nun saying, "It's all for you, Damien." Because this was and is still one of my favorite horror movies of the year. I make no qualms about that. I don't say that, jokingly. I don't say that in a mocking sense. I really, really like The First Omen. I think it is probably my favorite horror movie of the year. I think it has stayed my favorite horror movie of the year. And this was not on my personal movie bingo card. This movie has 2 scenes that sealed the deal because it had 2 scenes that scared the living shit out of me. One scene in particular, I had to look away from the screen like a little girl. I haven't done that in theaters since I was a wee little boy. This movie got me. It did. And it got me even though I walked out of the theater in broad daylight. And director Akarsha Stevenson, I'm probably pronouncing that first name right, give her more projects to do. Seriously, give her whatever she wants. Give her the freedom. She knows the genre. She's clearly a fan. But also credit to the star, to our lead actress, Neil Tiger Free. She knocks it out of the park. This movie does not work without her giving it her all, giving the performance that she gives. She has a scene right before the final act that is a homage to another movie that's been going around recently. I feel like it's been more apparently talked about more, I think mainly because of the scene that it pays homage to, or that this movie pays homage to in it. But many have talked about it. It could have gone wrong in so many ways, especially with modern audiences. But it doesn't. The way that Free just goes all into it. She doesn't hold back. And Stevenson's direction of the scene, it's an incredible scene. And again, it could have gone very, very wrong. It could have been looked at very wrong. My audience, thankfully, didn't do what I thought they would do when that scene happened. But it's such a great scene. And it's such a great movie. Free does a tremendous job. And I know she's been around for a little bit. I think the main thing that maybe people will know her from is The Servant, or just Servant on Apple TV. I think this is really kind of my first exposure to her. So it was very cool to see her in this role and kind of get to see that. And it kind of made me want to watch Servant because I heard she's also very good in that. Again, I didn't expect to say that The First Omen is one of my favorite horror movies of the year, but here I am. I am saying that with no, I'm not saying that with with no jokes. I just laughed right now because there's a nervous little laugh that I just did, but I'm saying that wholeheartedly. The First Omen, for me, is the best horror movie I've seen this year so far. Again, obviously, I'm still going to be watching a lot of horror movies between now and the end of the year, but right now, it's up there. Next movie we're going to talk about, A Quiet Place Day One. I was a big fan of the first movie, and the second movie was just okay. Day One is pretty damn good. It is. It is for me. It is equal parts, of course, survival, horror, monster, thriller that the first 2 movies have done. But these movies also have emotional drama to them. And this movie is no different. And I think this movie has much more emotional drama than the other 2, because this movie just amps up the emotional drama to 10 as opposed to the other movies. All of it led wonderfully and greatly by Lupita Nyong'o, which is no surprise, obviously, and Joseph Quinn, who was having himself a couple years, and the cat in the movie, played by 2 different cats. Importantly, you feel for these 2 characters. It's very reminiscent of the first movie where you cared for the family. You cared for Joseph Kosinski and Emily Blunt and the 2 kid actors. Here you care for Lupita's character, who is very much the lead in the movie, and Joseph Quinn is very much a supporting role. And you care for his character as well. You grow to care for his character because you kind of be like, oh, this guy's so annoying. But you end up caring for him as the movie goes on. You care for the cat. Again, it's a cat. And for those worried about like, I don't want to watch the movie because I think the cat's going to die. No, the only spoiler I will give you for this movie, the cat survives. Cat's okay. I know some people didn't like this movie, which is fine, obviously, but I really enjoyed it. At one point, you almost forget that you're watching a monster movie because there is this very lovely scene in an old bar near the end of the movie with Luongo and Quinn. And they are able to do that scene so good, so greatly with no dialogue. And it's heartwarming and it's sweet and it solidifies that you do. And at the end of the day, you do care for these two characters and you care that because you've seen their journey, you've seen what they've gone through, you know what they're going through. And especially in the case of Lupita's character. But in this environment of you can't make a sound, these two still these characters, the actors and the characters in general, just they manage to have this scene that if it was a romantic comedy or if it was any other sort of, movie, it would still work. You can take that scene out of the movie and just watch it by itself, not knowing that it's a Quiet Place movie. And I think most people will be like, that is a beautiful scene. It's shot beautifully. You don't need the dialogue for the characters. You know what they're trying to express in this scene, and it works. It worked for me anyway. So we do get a little bit more of the monsters here. It seems like they were trying to explore new lore, but the problem with these movies is that no one can talk. And the good thing and the bad thing is that there's not some character that's like, oh, this is what they're doing. These are the characters, or these are the monsters. Here's what they are. Here's their weaknesses. Here's why they're doing what they're doing. You don't get that. And that's be a good thing and a bad thing. Because the good thing is okay, you don't have someone coming in, just exposition dump all over us and, explain what these characters are and kind of, take away a little bit of the mystery of these characters. But the bad part is you want to know what's going on, but you can't because you can't, especially in this in the set of rules that the movie has done, where if you talk, you pretty much die, or if you make a lot of noise, you pretty much die. But I ended up liking A Quiet Place Day One. It's up there. I don't know where it will fall at the end of the year. Right now, it is right there on the honorable mentions kind of side of movies, but there's still a lot of movies left to be watched. And again, I just think that Luongo and Quinn really sold the movie at the end of the day. All right, and I think this is the final movie on the list that I'm going to be talking about. Yes, it is. It is Alien Romulus. I am a fan of the Alien series, even though it sometimes tests that. But I liked Alien Romulus. Yes, even with its faults. I'm pretty sure I talked about this on the last roundup that I did. But before it reaches all those faults that it did, and I think we all kind of agree where the faults end up. And a lot of that falls on director Fede Alvarez, who I am a fan of. I enjoyed Don't Breathe for what it was. I am probably one of the handful of people that truly, really, not just enjoyed, but liked, borderline loved his Evil Dead remake that he did. And when I found out that he was doing this, I was very optimistic because, and that's not usually the case a lot of the time, but I am very optimistic because I know that he is a self-professed fan of the series and of just horror in general. So I know that he was going to treat this with a lot of respect. And then you bring in Ridley Scott, of course, the man who created this and directed the first movie, and of course directed Prometheus and Alien Covenant, depending on how you feel about those movies. He came on board to produce. He gave Alvarez his blessing and pretty much gave the movie a pass, which is not necessarily something that, Scott has done with other directors. I think, probably only did with James Cameron because they kind of knew each other and that was that. But that was back in the day. But you don't get that a lot from Ridley Scott himself. So, and then we found out that this movie takes place between Alien and Aliens. And of course, the theories started going haywire, or not haywire, they started going wild, started going everywhere. Like, oh, are we going to get a Ripley scene? Or are we going to, we're going to get maybe one of the Marines or something along those lines. Everyone was just trying to figure out what was going to happen. And what we ended up getting felt like a soft adaptation of the video game Alien Isolation, which Alvarez admitted to playing a lot before he started doing the movie. But also a, no pun intended, isolated Alien movie that played to Alvarez's strengths and gave us Alien fans some great moments to add to the franchise. Yes, we have our classic moments, the chest burster scene, a face hugger latching onto someone's face, and some good old xenomorphs, right? But then we reach the callbacks, the too much callbacks, or as I called it in some people have been calling it, and I called it in the monthly rewatch that I did, callback-omania. Callbacks are fun. I think we all agree on that. Some callbacks are fun. Some of them feel very fan servicey. Some of them are very fan servicey, but depending on how you do the callback, it usually, mileage varies on that. But in this movie, it's like, no. We're going to go all in on the callbacks. And then there's a character, which has split fans on how they feel. Personally, story-wise, it makes sense when I'm thinking just about the story, but they also could have gone another direction. But Alvarez was very careful behind the camera on how he handled it. And I talked about that on the August monthly roundup, not rewind. Talking about the movie. So if you want to hear kind of that story, if you just want to, or you want to search it up, I want to do that. I want to try to keep this as spoiler free as possible. But Alien Romulus has amazing production design, has amazing cinematography. It is a beautiful movie to look at. And the practical effects, because they did a lot of practical effects in this movie, and it shows. You can clearly tell this movie is filled with practical effects. But the shine here is also the great cast. The highlights, of course, being lead actress Kaylee Spaney, who's having a tremendous year with this, Civil War last year, I think even earlier this year, because I think it was a limited release and then came out wide this year. I don't remember. But she had Priscilla, right. She's obviously, I had other stuff along the ways, but it kind of feels like these last 2 years, her name has been coming up a lot. She plays our main character, very Ripley-esque, Ripley-coded, if you will, but very much her own character, which is a major plus. Isabella Merced, who plays one of the crew members, who had the scream just locked in. Her screams in this movie, perfect. And her character just goes through the ringer for the entire movie. And I felt sorry for her character. And Merced just does that so wonderfully. But it's David Johnson, who plays the android character in the movie called Andy. He gives the best performance in the year. He is essentially playing two different characters. And they are so different from each other that he does it to perfection, because it really is two different characters. And it's him. And the way he just snaps out of one and goes to another. This man is extremely talented, and we should see him in a lot more things coming up. I think he signed on something recently too, if I remember correctly. He's very, very good. So keep an eye out for him in the future. Alien Romulus won't be for everyone, even Alien fans. But if you can get past the excessive callbacks, if you can get past everything, I think it'd be good. I think you'll be fine. It really is pretty much the final act of the movie. That kind of like those last, half hour probably, where everything is like callback-omania. And a lot of it works. Some of it doesn't. Some of it is like, okay. But I think it still works. I think it's still a good movie. I think everything even before that is still a good movie. I think I heard somebody say like this is almost like a haunted house movie. It's kind of something like that. And I kind of had to agree with them. I forgot who said it. But it's a very good movie. Even with the final act, even with a lot of the missteps along. And I talk more about that in the August roundup if you want to go hear the kind of spoiler discussion on all that. But I still very much liked Alien Romulus. And there you have it, folks. That's the horror movie roundup of the movies that I've seen this year anyway. And these are obviously, this is my opinion and everything and so far, because I still have some horror movies to watch, obviously. But there's also still horror movies to come out this year. In November, this week, which I believe is when I'm releasing this podcast. I know I'm releasing it kind of late, but we have A24's newest horror movie, Heretic, that stars Hugh Grant. Been hearing some pretty decent things about that, so there's that. It's written and directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods, who directed 65 and wrote A Quiet Place, the first one, and The Boogeyman. So it could really go either way, but I've been hearing some pretty good things about the movie. In December, we have the new Amy Adams-led Night Bitch, which I'm surprised hasn't gotten a new title, but it's about her character thinking she's turning into a dog that is supposed to be a horror comedy, and that everyone was like, wow, Amy Adams really fell off, huh? Like, what is she doing? And then the movie came out at the Toronto International Film Festival, and everyone was like, oh, we were totally wrong. And this led me to like this thing I didn't want to mention it here, but I'm just going to mention it because I mentioned that. And I've been seeing it a lot this year because I've been seeing it with like Adam Driver as well, because obviously he had Megalopolis come out earlier this year. Let actors have fun. Let actors choose the roles they want to do. Even the serious actors, even the Oscar-worthy actors. Let them have fun roles. Let them do roles that they don't normally do. Let them go out of the box. Because a lot of the time when they go out of the box, they nail it. Stop putting them in the boxes that you want. Let them do the wacky, zany roles that they don't typically get to do because everyone's like, oh no, they should be doing this kind of movie. It's one of the things that just annoys me about film Twitter. And podcasters. I know some of you. I don't think any of you listen, but I've heard your podcasts. And even people in the industry do it too. They're like, why are you doing this? Like, just let them do the roles. Like, why do you get so upset about them? Why am I getting? You're getting upset, gets me upset, but it gets me upset because you're getting upset. I'm not upset about them doing the roles. It's like, hey, they want to do a fun, wacky role, let them do it. Yeah. Anyway. Also coming out in December, there's an independent horror action movie called Werewolf starring Frank Grillo. Trailer came out a couple weeks ago. It looks interesting. The werewolves are practical from what I hear, so that's a huge plus on that. And then, of course, finally, the big one, the big horror movie coming out is Nosferatu, the new movie by Robert Eggers, coming out on Christmas Day. A lot of people's most anticipated movie of the year, a lot of people's, must-watch list. It's definitely on mine. What better way to celebrate Christmas than watching a horror movie, a remake of Nosferatu? Why not, right? But let me get to the stupid early preview as well of 2025. And it looks 2025 next year looks pretty decent. I'm not gonna lie. January, we got the new Wolfman coming out, which looks pretty good. The producers of Barbarian have a new movie called Companion, which is also coming out in January. And Steven Soderbergh is back behind the camera with Presence, which is set to follow a supernatural entity in a suburban home through its POV. So I guess it's very much like In a Violent Nature, but with a supernatural ghost, I guess, instead of a mass killer. In February, you have Odgus Perkins' next movie, The Monkey, based on the story by Stephen King. Obviously, Perkins is in a little bit of a role with Longlegs this year. Maybe he'll continue that next year with The Monkey. We'll see. March, Sinners, the new movie with Michael B. Jordan and Ryan Coogler, which is supposedly about brothers fighting vampires. It's a period piece. At least we know that. Trailer doesn't really give away the vampire twist, but kind of sort of maybe. But we'll see what comes of that. Then we'll jump to June of next year. We got Megan 2.0 and 28 Weeks Later, which is pretty cool. July, we have Jurassic World Rebirth, which is horror adjacent. I know it's not, it's horror adjacent. And then the requel of I Know What You Did Last Summer, also coming out in July. August, the director of the original Strangers, Brian Bertino, he's directing a new movie with Dakota Fanning called Vicious, which will have a stranger concept as well. And then we also have Insidious 6 coming out in August as well. In September, we have the last, or supposed last, Conjuring movie, The Conjuring Last Rites. We'll also have Saw 11 and The Bride, which is written and directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal, which is a new variation on The Bride of Frankenstein, which also has a very good cast. Of course, I didn't write that down, but I do know it has a very good cast in there. October, we have The Black Phone 2 with the same creative team of Scott Derrickson and Robert C. Cargill. They started production on that earlier this week as well. November was supposed to be the new Blade movie, but they, of course, pushed that back, and Fox came in and swooped that up because there's the new Predator movie coming out by the same team behind Prey. It's titled Predator Badlands, which stars Elle Fanning. I'm okay with that because I'm looking forward to that. And then in December, we have Five Nights at Freddy's 2 coming out early in the month. And those are all the theater releases, obviously. There's streaming movies that haven't been announced yet. There's one for sure that's coming out next year, which is Guillermo del Toro's new take on Frankenstein. I believe that's a Netflix movie that will be coming out sometime next year as well. And I think he actually finished production on that already. And that's it, everybody. Let me know what your thoughts on the horror and horror adjacent movies were this year. Did it beat out last year? Was it a letdown? Was it better than what you originally thought, or you originally thought rather? Let me know on the social media links down below, or if you're listening to this on YouTube, right there in the comment section. I usually release this much earlier, closer to Halloween, but obviously I couldn't get that. I couldn't get that done. So hopefully this is sufficient enough. So again, just go ahead and check the links down below. All the social medias are there where you can follow the podcast. Make sure to do all that good stuff. Subscribe, follow, all that good, rate, all that good stuff. And I hope you all had a very good Halloween, a good spooky season. Obviously, recording this section anyway, after the election. I'm not gonna talk about that, just try to be good people. Just try to get through it. And until next time, I will see you right here on the Movie Pit Podcast. As always, go watch some movies.
Whoop, whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movies!